Hey everyone, I've got an interview with Drew Pavlou. This is related to China, the Chinese Communist Party hacking his emails, exposing people to a Muslim to actually get locked up. It's an interesting story, but we're going to have a chat about it. I'm going to chat about the Dom Perrottet stuff after this. I know a lot of you guys are wondering about it, but in the meantime, I want to cover this story because it's topical. It happened only a couple of days ago, I do believe. And I'm just going to join my other account in now. Give me 2 seconds. There we go. Yeah, bear with me, team. Bear with me. So I'm just going to join Drew in a moment, and there we go. All right, Drew, where are you, man? Let's get this underway. All right. How you doing, everyone? Good to see you. Someone's saying the HIA have taken down this statement. I'll check it out, see what they've said. We're just waiting for Drew Pavlou. Yeah, so we've seen a ton of things come out from Dominic Perrottet, and very enraging, saying that he's still got this stance towards the teachers. And I'm gonna dissect that another time. But in the meantime, I'm here to talk with Drew. Drew's got a very interesting story about how the Chinese Communist Party hacked his emails, exposing a Uyghur Muslim to actually end up getting locked up. And so he's going to tell that story. Drew, welcome, brother.
Hello, mate. Thank you so much for having me, Joel.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, hey, man.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people tuning in right now, guys. This isn't the sort of live stream where I'm giving you an update on COVID. I'm going to do that after this. So if you want to know my hot take on Perrottet and his stance on teachers and all that, that's going to happen in a sec. But in the meantime, got Drew Pavlou. Drew Pavlou is the leader of a political party that has been set up to promote human rights, especially in China. Recently, there was an article written yesterday morning from The Australian, and on the second page, they had an article about Drew's emails being hacked, exposing a Uyghur Muslim who had emailed him to being jailed, who was jailed in China and sent to a concentration camp. Drew, thanks for joining.
Thank you, man. Yeah, man, as you said, this has been just a hellish week. It's like walking through hell. Because we were able to confirm 2-3 days ago that the Chinese government were behind a hack against my account. They got into my emails, and based off the fact that I was communicating with a Uyghur Australian friend, a Uyghur who's in Australia, Australian citizen, they basically took his mother, who was still in China, to one of the concentration camps. And man, just what that does to you, I mean, just so sick. Like reading the stories about what happens in the camps, the torture, the brutality, the rape, because it's a genocide what's happening. And to have this sit on my conscience is so sickening. The Chinese government have obviously intended it as a way to try and terrify us into silence. It's a terror tactic. They go after innocent people. They go after the families. They go after innocent families when they can't terrify individuals into silence. Already, they threatened my family members with death threats. And now they've taken this mate of mine, his innocent mother, who's never been involved in politics in her entire life. They've taken her to one of these torture camps.
Right. Well, let me walk the audience through that specifically. So, for those of you just wondering, Drew, obviously, this isn't the usual Drew Pavlou. Drew has been put through the ringer the last few days because his emails have been used against him. Private emails, not like Hillary Clinton's server. A normal private email with a 2-factor authentication feature being used was hacked, a high-level hack by a couple of Australian people who are in Australia that are members of the CCP.
No, it was the IP address was from China itself.
Right.
But what happened was they passed on information that they got from my hack. They passed it on to CCP supporters in Australia, who then spread it. And yeah, as you said, man, it's not the usual Drew that's sort of here today, because normally I'm sort of just laughing, and I take the piss a lot, and I use a lot of jokes and satire in my politics and whatnot. But man, just this last week, just hell. Just I can't even describe that feeling that someone may be going through absolute hell on earth because simply as a way to try and terrify someone like me, try and terrify activists into silence. And man, it just the thing is, it just they use this as a way to try and terrify me and try and bully us into giving up all our activism and stuff. Nothing could fail more spectacularly, because every time they do this, every time they go after innocent people that I love, my resolve to go against this government just hardens. Like, I am so confirmed in my ambition to try and fight this government now. Like previously, obviously you mentioned I've formed a political party to go against the CCP and, bring together all these communities that have been persecuted and stand up for Australia's sovereignty. Obviously, given my age, I'm a 22-year-old. Given my age, I thought when I was setting it up, I was thinking, it's not about necessarily trying to actually win the election, because obviously it's very hard. Like, I was just thinking, as long as we get the message out there, it's a success. But now I'm like, no, this has to be life or death. I have to get in there, because what I want to do, man, I want to fucking nationalize Chinese-owned mines, not Chinese-owned banks, Chinese-owned businesses in Australia. I want to strip Xi Jinping's corrupt family members who've stored their assets here in Australia. I want to strip them of their wealth. Every time they try and store their wealth in an Australian apartment, in an Australian bank account, trying to escape purges back home, just strip it, just take it away. No more relationship with this brutal dictatorship. No more. We have to actually completely cut Australia's ties with this government. And I'm so resolved now, man. Like, what they've done to this innocent person because of me, there is nothing more that I want now to fight the Chinese government.
All right, so for those of you just tuning in now, talking with Drew Pavlou. Drew's emails were hacked, exposing a Uyghur Muslim and sending them to a camp because the information was given to the Chinese Communist Party. Drew, I'm right there with you, brother. I wish that the Prime Minister and the whole government, I don't see how it's a partisan issue, isn't calling out modern day concentration camps, because that's what they are. And it's even worse now because they're using technology like hacking to facilitate that.
Man, like, the other day, like, this was the sickest thing, like, the day that this story came out, we had the confirmation. Like, there was a story with CNN. I know, like, you don't really like CNN or whatever, but they had interviewed a Chinese guard who was actually, like, at these concentration camps. He was basically a whistleblower, and he was describing in such brutal detail, like, the rape, the torture that goes on in these camps. Like, they rape, like, members of the concentration camps with, like, electric batons. Like, it is just, like, it's indescribable. It's just total evil. It's like genocide.
A lot of you and I both want to see Scott Morrison stand up to this, but one of the problems I see, and I think Joe Biden's run into this same problem, is we see these things going on in China and Russia, and then you criticize them and you confront them about it. Even the Afghan government now, which is Taliban government, and they come back at you with, well, what's going on in America? You've got, black people being indiscriminately pushed, and, they really play into that. And in Australia now, I've seen the coverage of what's been going on here. And I don't mean to make this a COVID thing, not at all. What's been going on in China, that is that is hell right now. That is hell for the Uyghur Muslims and the Chinese people. But the point must be made. They're going to come at you, and the Prime Minister is saying, look at your own country. Look what's going on. The people are protesting against you. It's like, what does Scott Morrison say against that?
Yeah, no, look, like, already I've been targeted like that in the past. Like they tried to, supporters of the Chinese government tried to smear me as a white supremacist, tried to smear me as a neo-Nazi. They tried to say, oh, Drew's supporting all these brutal things that have happened in Australia or the US. Man, I was actually someone who, like, was present at Black Lives Matter. And then I also was opposing police brutality the other week when police were bashing just, like, construction workers on the streets of Melbourne. Like, I've been very consistent the whole time in that I believe in human rights. I believe that people should be free from persecution and police state control. I've been very, very consistent that whole time. Like, I've been willing to stand up against even our own government when that's happened. Like, in a way that I don't think is a left or right issue. Like, for example, like police brutality regarding the COVID lockdowns. Like, I mean, I guess that's traditionally been seen as more of a conservative issue. I mean, I talked about that because I was so, when I saw riot police just bashing people in the street and they were bashing an elderly woman, like a grandma, like, how can I not talk about that? And then equally, you know, like things that might ordinarily be seen as more left wing, like, oh, it's supporting refugees or you know, supporting Black Lives Matter, like wherever there was police brutality or human rights abuses, like I actually just tried to be consistent and speak up against them because, you know, unfortunately the problem is we don't have much of a democracy these days to defend, you know, because so much of our democracy has just been bought up by vested interests, corrupt oligarchs, corrupt businessmen. So much of the economy has been bought up by China. You know, our elite is basically in bed with this genocidal dictatorship, and they've got this kind of like symbiotic relationship where they offshore all our manufacturing and our industry over to China, and then the working class in Australia gets crushed. And then, but equally, you know, the wealthy people in Australia who make massive profits when that happens, like they're in bed with one another. The people with power in this country, they're in bed with the people in power in China. Innocent Chinese people are also persecuted, man. Like, you know, you've still got basically people. There are suicide nets outside of factories in China because the working conditions are so brutal. They've got slave labor still in China. They're not allowed to have a trade union. They're not allowed to organize workers or anything. Like these are the most brutal conditions ever. The Chinese people are just as much the victims who are being persecuted. So yeah,
we've got a situation in Australia where we're seeing a lot of takeover of some of our politicians here. You know, and you've often pointed out your Twitter feed is great. Like the amount of commentary you've got there is amazing. Especially when you start calling out is it Twiggy Forrest?
And Mark McGowan.
And Mark McGowan, that photo I saw the other day that you put up. But you've also criticised someone in the Liberal Democrat Party now, who's Campbell Newman. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, if it's as clear cut as you say.
Because this is the thing. I make criticism of politicians who are close to China because the Chinese government is carrying out these brutal genocidal policies. They've brutalized innocent people. So I'm against politicians having a close relationship with this government. And I've been very consistent, whether it be Liberal Party, Labor Party, Minor Party, I've always been opposed to any politician who's basically getting into bed with China. So, for example, recently you saw Twiggy Forrest and Mark McGowan in Western Australia. They were hosting a function celebrating the 72nd anniversary of CCP rule in China. And they invited the local Chinese government diplomats, CCP officials in Australia, basically, and they were basically attacking the Australian government for supposedly, you know, getting it wrong on China, supposedly being aggressive towards China. And they were singing the praises of the Chinese government. And I attacked them because I said, these people do not care about anything but their own wealth. Like Twiggy Forrest, all his wealth is based off basically selling iron ore to China. We've unfortunately transformed the economy in Australia into basically just being a quarry for China. We used to be a country that made things. We used to be able to make cars. We used to be able to make, you know, manufactured goods. We had steel manufacturing in this country. Now we've basically been effectively reduced to a quarry for China. And Twiggy Forrest benefits from that. He's worth $15-20 billion, and that's all from just basically trade with the Chinese government. And when he sells the iron ore to China, it comes back in the form of battleships. Mark McGowan, Labor politician, he knows that his state, its budget is very much, I guess, tied to, you know, the fortunes of iron ore exports to China. So he doesn't care about anything else but basically the trade relationship. As long as they can keep selling rocks to China, then he's happy. He doesn't care how many people are who are in concentration camps. And recently I attacked, you know, and I've also attacked Gladys Liu, for example, in the Liberal Party, because she was on the board of CCP-linked organizations. She was basically linked with United Front organizations. These are CCP, these are Chinese Communist Party bodies. She was linked with known Chinese government spies. She wouldn't even say on television that Xi Jinping was a dictatorship. She was questioned and she refused to even say that Xi Jinping was a dictator because she was so worried about her Chinese donors. And then
can we circle back? Can we circle back? I hear you. Okay. Yeah, I want to come to that for this reason. I hear you on the major party ones, and we're in alignment on that. A lot of, you know, my shtick. My shtick is everyone get involved, go join a political party.
Yeah.
If you're a lefty, go join parties like Drew or the Greens or whatever. Make it a better party. And if you're on the conservative side, go join whatever party you want. I want more. You know, in New South Wales here, we have 0.5%. of people here that are eligible voters that are members of parties. That's not okay.
Yeah,
That's not
it's
okay.
sad.
It's worse than the 1%, brother. It's worse than the 1%. It's like, okay, we've got 0.5% picking who the candidates are. So what I want to get out of you right now is I have concerns, initially. I don't know much about this topic, and so I'm an open book. We know Clive Palmer has been having a lot of dealings with China. We know there's that deal that you mentioned about Campbell Newman in the Liberal Democrat Party. To what extent do you think, and let's be intellectually honest here, to what extent do you think that this is a problem, and how much does it work? Is it just a trade relationship? Were they just Chinese people, or were they actually the CCP? Like, can you, especially, can we start with the Campbell Newman one?
Look, with Campbell Newman, if you just type this in, Campbell Newman China, there's a headline with the Brisbane Times: why did a Chinese developer give Campbell Newman mother-in-law $5 million? So, and if you go to the story, a Chinese investor gave $5 million to Sebastian Monsour, the brother-in-law of former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman, in 2017 because he trusted him. So, I mean, why is that? I mean, I just think anyone who's a politician in Australia should be able to explain why their close family members are receiving mystery million-dollar payments from Chinese property developers. I mean, I don't understand why.
Hang on a sec. Hang on a sec. I'm right there with you. And the Chinese Communist Party own a lot of these all huge development companies. But I'm trying to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, because once I set my feet in, I don't move. I've worked in a property development company before, and I've seen a lot of Chinese people and former members of the Chinese Communist Party come out to Australia and try to get their wealth out of the Chinese Communist Party. And they're trying to, just like the same people that are trying to leave because of human rights abuses, others are trying to leave to save their wealth. And they do end up coming out. Now, this is my question. Do we know those Chinese Communist Party people are ones with ill intentions? That's my question. Like the Port of Darwin, that's like a critical infrastructure. But, but doing a deal with your brother-in-law, is there, like, do you see what I mean? And that's what I'm interested in delving in. Because if there's a problem, I want to know about it. But if there's not,
of course,
we've got to be honest about it.
My point is, anyone who's able to get to that level of wealth in China, they have to have ties with the government, because it's a totalitarian state. No one is allowed to get rich without the consent of the party. That's why you see recently the stories where Jack Ma, who was previously their most powerful billionaire, they just basically disappeared him for months. No one even knew where he went. He had just disappeared. And that was just the one party state in China. Basically, it was a show of force by Xi Jinping to show no one can lift a thumb without me authorizing it, basically. And so that's my point. I'm just like, this guy, he transferred, if you look at the story, Mr. Lee, he transferred $5 million to Campbell Newman's brother-in-law, $2.5 million from his Bank of China account. I mean, these are basically Chinese state-owned banks. Like, all this stuff, like, I would find it so impossible to see how this guy would be so wealthy, have millions of dollars in his Bank of China account without having any ties with the Chinese Communist Party whatsoever. And look, if Campbell Newman can explain why his brother-in-law got a $5 million payment after Campbell Newman, met Xi Jinping, then, if he has a legitimate reason for why that happened, then he should go out and explain it, because I think the onus needs to be on the politicians who are running for power. Anyone who's running for parliament and they've got family ties with Chinese businesses, they've got family ties with, wealthy Chinese investors who may be linked to the party, the onus should be on them to explain how there's no conflict of interest. At least with me, there's no chance whatsoever that any of my family members will get $5 million mystery payments from the Chinese Communist Party. You're
too young, man. You know what's funny with people like you and I, Drew? We're too young for them to find dirt. So then they say their criticism becomes, you're too young to talk on these things or to run in politics. And it's like, all right, well, you can, like, I can't win with you guys.
Going up against the Chinese Communist Party, like, I've basically, it's taken over my entire life. Like, I lost my kind of youth, They went after my family. They went after my friends. I can't just live a normal life, Like, I couldn't, for example, just go and, I couldn't, like, I have to, like, always think about everything I'm doing. Like, that's why I stopped. I don't go to parties, I don't go drinking. I just don't do anything, ordinary young people do, I suppose, because I've just got to be squeaky clean. Nothing can exist on me, you know, because these people want to destroy me. You know, when I was last year, when I was at the height of the, so I'm not sure how many people following or watching right now are aware of how I was like almost kicked out of the University of Queensland because the university had such close ties with China. They spent $500,000 trying to expel me because the Chinese government, they put out newspaper articles calling for me to get kicked out of the uni. When that was happening, there were anonymous bot accounts going around online, and they were. So this is the thing, right? Like one thing that happened was UQ was called. The UQ senior leadership were called before Parliament to explain what happened, and they were questioned under oath. So they had to tell the truth, and they were asked, how much did you spend? And they said up to $500,000 basically on 3 law firms, Minter Ellison, Clayton Utz, some of the top law firms.
This was to target Drew, guys.
Yeah.
This was at our universities.
And they brought in another thing that they unveiled. They spent tens of thousands of dollars bringing in two PR firms, crisis PR firms. What do PR firms do? They basically try and, you know, background on people in the media. They try to smear people. So around the time that UQ admits that they had PR firms, there were all these anonymous bot accounts going around on Reddit and on Facebook going, oh, people don't know the truth of Drew Pavlou. He's raped many women. He's a terrible person. He's a white supremacist. Like there were like rape allegations. There were like just the most brutal smears ever. People were trying to like destroy my entire life. Like honestly, when there were fake rape allegations against me, by just basically anonymous bot accounts online. And never ever substantiated, just lies.
Yeah,
you know,
man. It's
when
crap.
that happened,
Don't let it get to you, you know.
I was suicidal when that happened because that is
seriously.
It was so sick what they did to me, just trying to smear me with lies. Like we're talking just basically anonymous bot accounts, just anonymous accounts, no profile picture, names are just completely blank. Like they're just posting like, oh, the real reason Drew's getting expelled is because he raped all these people, or he's or he led a race riot on campus. He bashed. I saw Drew. There was one account that was like, one account said, "Oh, I saw Drew Pavlou bash a black person on campus." Just absolute crazy stuff. These people were trying to basically completely destroy my name, completely like dirty everything about me, and they were trying to do that because there's no actual dirt on me, man. Because I'm just an ordinary person.
Mate, I get it. I
got involved in all of this because I was sickened by the genocide that's going on. And I'm a Christian, and I believe that all human beings deserve dignity and respect, even if we're of a different ethnicity, different background, different religion. I still believe that person's life matters, and they should not be persecuted by the Chinese government.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, brother. And it's funny. I was attacked a few months ago. So I've had some smears of my own. I was attacked a few months ago, one for not being a journalist. By journalists who, you know, because they have the accreditation at a university, they went to journalism school, they can ruin someone's life like yours, or even ruin a cafe called Love Crate. And I'm like, I don't need an accreditation. I've been at this for over a year. I'm still here because people have found value in what I do. I was also smeared by WA Channel 7. They tried to call me sexist in a segment when I was talking. Well, I was talking about QR codes. And they took it completely out of context. And they said, oh, he's talking about women and dating life. And I was like, no, you guys are just, this is why I've got a following, because you guys are so crap at your job. And it was a really good laugh because it didn't stick. Of course it didn't stick. This is why I have my own audience. It's so that people understand that. And the last one, and this is Drew, you're going to love this one because we've been chatting about this, the Uyghur camps for a very long time. So more recently, I've had a very disgruntled person in the freedom fighter movement that thought that in the darkest hour of our country's time, other than world wars, that they should smear me as anti-Muslim, which is hilarious because right now we're talking about Uyghur Muslims being targeted by the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah. And so they're trying to smear me as Islamophobic. And
look, bro, this is the problem, right? Like a lot of these progressives, like, and I say this as someone who actually, like, you know, mostly is progressive or whatever, but like I'm like able to see through a lot of like the sort of establishment progressive because like these people went after me as well, you know, and like the really frustrating hypocritical thing is a lot of these progressives, like they're all for supporting Muslims being persecuted everywhere. And I mean, that's great. And I support them on that too. But then when it comes to China, they just don't want to talk about it because they're like, oh, if you talk about China having concentration camps, you're trying to spread anti-Chinese racism. It's like, no, We're just actually trying to wake people up to... My friend's mother is in a concentration camp right now because they hacked my emails. I wish people would fucking wake up, man. These people are just... Man, it's ideological madness. It's ideological madness.
But you're going to rise to the surface, though, brother. You know, there's people like, you know... Let's take another example. In America, they had the 2016 election, and people were saying, oh, Russia actually won it. It wasn't Trump. It was Russia, Russia, Russia. That was how they rationalized it. This is how you know you're a true progressive in America. The true progressives that spoke out, people like Jimmy Dore, people like Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske, they picked up on that very early, and they called out their own side, like the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparyan, who bought into that. And
I agree on that. I now think, like at the time, because, you know, this whole experience being like targeted the way I have been over the past 2 years, obviously, like it sort of just changes your entire worldview. Back when 2016 Trump election, like I was just more of a kind of just straight down the line progressive, like without really any independent thought. And so like, yeah, I was all on board with the Russian narrative or whatever. But what is now clear to me is like, that was just basically a coping mechanism for people who were too embarrassed to admit that, like, what passes for the left these days doesn't represent working class people in a lot of cases. Like,
yeah, well,
even just recently, even just recently seeing like so-called progressive people like actually cheer on police brutality and violence and stuff like that against just like protesters in Melbourne. Like, even if you don't agree, like literal police brutality, people were cheering it on, and it's like, how are you guys progressive?
Yeah,
you can't just basically change your position based off, like, you can't just like say, oh, police brutality is fine in some circumstances.
Yeah, where are they, brother? Like we had protests late last year and in July and August, you know, for Black Lives Matter. Where are those tens of thousands of people in each city? I think it was something like 30,000 in your city, Brisbane.
Look, I'm probably one of the only progressives who went to Black Lives Matter, supported Black Lives Matter, and then like I was willing to actually like call out the police brutality that was happening the other week in Melbourne and stuff like that. Because unfortunately, a lot of people just, man, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but like, and I don't agree with that sort of stuff. But at the same time, like, you can't just support police brutality. There were riot police who were like bashing elderly women. There was stuff that was just so completely unjustified. Like, you don't have to necessarily agree or disagree with a protest to say police brutality is wrong. And that's the frustrating thing. Unfortunately, a lot of the time with sort of establishment progressives, it's very much double standards, very hypocritical. Because, man, I've always actually seen myself as a progressive, but honestly, the main people who've attacked me and like basically made things worse when I was targeted by the Chinese government, the main people were progressives. And that was so disappointing to me, man. That was that was a killer. When you think, oh, these people are on my side, these people are supposed to be on my team, and then then they're actually the ones going, oh, you're racist, blah blah blah. Like, yeah. And I tried to talk to some of these people and say, like, you know, do you know what's happening to the Uyghurs? Like, I've got little friends. I've got friends with family members in these camps, and that wasn't enough to change people's minds because they're just set in stone. It's just crazy ideology. Honestly, it's just like a lot of people were just like, oh, Trump was mean to China, therefore, if you're critical of the CCP, you're automatically Trump far right or whatever. That's how a lot of progressives unfortunately saw it. And it's actually like, it is so mind-numbing and it's so frustrating because then they make an issue, the incarceration of 1 million people in concentration camps, they try and make it into a left-right issue. And it's like, how do you guys do that?
So much for never again. You know, it really gives me the craps. And this is my problem. We're sort of seeing, Drew, we're seeing the start of that in Australia. I really believe that. You know, there are these, they're not concentration camps, but there are these camps, there are these quarantine places. And they're nowhere near as what's happening with the Uyghurs. I've read, you know, people's testimonies too that have escaped, and from there. But there are things going on. I mean, I just took a call the other day from someone who was quarantined in her own home of residence, and the security guards there were making her do chores to allow her to get outside. And I thought, this is not okay. We're going, you know, I don't know if you read the 9 stages of genocide, but, you know, China's followed that to the T.
Yeah. I have studied that before.
And then that's the thing. We're seeing this demonization of the, and this is not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the Chinese Communist Party. But I study what goes on in China so we can stop from happening here. And if we can, here's the thing: if you don't sort your own home out, you can't help overseas.
Mm.
And at the moment, I see a prime minister that's gearing up for war with China, even though he doesn't know what he's doing. The submarine deal is a disaster. But he's gearing up for war with China. But we've spent the last year turning our entire nation into a nation of snitches and just weak sheep that just follow,
look,
you know.
Look, it's really like when you see some people like cheering on the police brutality, that's when you know like those are the types of people who would be very comfortable in a police state. So like, you know, what's happening with the Uyghurs, I think, is its own really unique, like, evil phenomenon. But I do agree with the broader thing. I do agree with the broader argument, and not even just related to COVID, but just in general. Like, we have been losing a lot of our democratic freedoms in Australia just very silently. A lot of the time it's rolled back without people even knowing it. Like, a lot of the time it's like the cybersecurity laws and stuff like that. It's passed with both major parties supporting it. And, like, they give police such extreme powers. Like, they're able to just basically they're able to basically imprison journalists who are whistleblowers. They're able to hold people incommunicado, in secret, without even letting them see a lawyer. Like, when you read some of the stuff that this legislation allows, it's sickening. Like even years ago, and it was kind of justified with war and terror stuff, but like they were passing legislation that would just allow police to basically like hold you for like weeks at a time in secret without you seeing a lawyer. Like,
Yeah.
When the government has that power, how are we safe? I don't understand. Like, the sad thing is a lot of people just haven't realized the extent to which like freedoms have been rolled back. Just civil liberties have been under attack for a long, long time. And I think our democracy is increasingly hollow because it's increasingly just bought up by vested interests and these really powerful sort of elites who just have no interest in common with the ordinary people. And look, even just recently, like, I'm shocked by just the police brutality that was taking place in our cities, and like just the fact, like, for example, like when they were shutting down the transit system to stop people protesting, it's like, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the protest, like, this is literally what the Hong Kong government did in Hong Kong. Like this is what the CCP did in Hong Kong. They were. I remember in Hong Kong they were shutting down the transit system so people wouldn't protest. I'm not necessarily saying like. I'm not necessarily like. I mean, again, like, what's Hong Kong is its own unique evil phenomenon. What they've done there, and so I would say we don't want to like necessarily cheapen just how brutal the CCP is by like making over comparisons. But that said, though, like, I mean, it's a very, very, very worrying sign when your government is doing stuff that would look like when your government is doing stuff that ordinarily you would see the CCP doing, shutting down transit system for protests, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the protest. This is what I say to other progressives, right? This is what I say to other progressives. It's like that they cheer on the police when they do stuff like that. I'm like, okay, but what happens when they do that at the next Black Lives Matter protest or whatever? What happened? Like, where would you, if they were shutting down the transit system to stop a Black Lives Matter protest,
and Uber and any other transport service, they also said you can't operate between these times.
Well, that's what I was trying to say to other progressives. I was like, even if we disagree with these protest guys, like this expansion of police powers, it's just going to be turned back against you guys, the progressives, eventually. Like, man, like, you think that's not going to be used against you now that the police have like demonstrated they can shut down a city's transport system if they really want to stop a protest? It's funny, right? Like, you know, the social alternative people at like, they're always on university campus and they all think they're so revolutionary and radical and they're going to lead the next revolution. Like, like, they're suddenly just cheering on the police shutting down the transit system. And it's like, guys, you're not going to be leading a revolution when the police are shutting down the transit system. When you want to have your progressive protest, like, they'll do the same to you.
100%. And that's where it shouldn't be like that. But that's why Black Lives Matter is marching with the anti-vaxxers in New York City, because they recognize that. And that's the thing, man. Things are going to get so bad here. I'm just so glad that the Americans, because I waved the flag to Anomaly. I don't know if you know who Anomaly is. He's got his own channel. I waved the flag to him and said, brother, he's a legend. He started interviewing all these Australians, and it got millions of views. And then it sort of popularized it. Everyone's talking about it now. I've got a long list of all the segments since I think July of these, of basically these Americans picking up on it. And bro, they're fighting against the mandates. They're fighting against all this stuff. The states are taking back their sovereignty in places like, you know, Texas and Florida. It's great to see. But yeah, man, look, it's coming here. I was just pulling up my you know what look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about me.
Look, my position, right? Like lately with what has happened to my Uyghur friend, his mum in a concentration camp, I really want to just make sure. Like, I don't want to necessarily get involved in partisan fights anymore. I used to do that a lot. Like, I would sledge the left, sledge the right, and like I don't want to necessarily do that anymore. I really need to just try and focus on like these concentration camps and stuff like that. But like that, so like my position, it's not even necessarily left or right one when it comes to this one with the COVID lockdown protests. I'm just saying, you know, regardless of whether we support or disagree with the protest, like if you're a progressive, it's going to go back to you eventually. It's going to roll back onto all you guys. Like if they can shut down like that's what I would just say to other progressives. I'd be like, if they can shut down the transit system now, like they can do that with a Black Lives Matter protest. They can do it with an environmental protest. If you guys ever were really like actually going to try and take on the powers that be, they're just going to be able to do that to you. And they should think about whether that's actually something that they would. I mean, they should think about that, because unfortunately a lot of people don't even think about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, I don't want to beat a dead horse or talk too much about Australian politics just yet. But did you have anything else you wanted to say? And before you leave, let me give you a shout out, because I don't know. This is the great thing about me. I'm not a member of a party, so I can shout out whichever party I want. If you guys are listening, if you're a progressive, or even if you just want to join a political party, go to Drew's profile, go follow him if you want to keep track of what's going on. He does mostly post on Twitter, but if you want to follow him on Instagram, click this, it'll drop down and you can follow him. Oh, follow me while you're here, by the way.
Because look, I would honestly say the movement I'm trying to build is, I'm not trying to build something that's necessarily left or right. I'm trying to build something that just basically has at its core value like a love of humanity, you know, and opposition to authoritarianism, opposition to totalitarian rule. So we are a party that, you know, is accepting of people from different political backgrounds, of course. Like, I've got lots of different conservative supporters. I've got lots of different progressive supporters. The common thing is we just are basically trying to take on the Chinese Communist Party. We're independents who are completely outside the system. We cannot be bought off by China. We cannot be bullied by China. Like, they've already gone after me for 2 years so intensely, and I never buckled once. So if we get into Parliament, we will be so strong in standing up for Australian democracy, standing up for civil liberties. Every single time any government, whether it's a Labor or a Liberal government, tries to basically roll back civil liberties in Australia, they try and criminalise journalists, they try and criminalise whistleblowers, they try and shut down protests. We will be fighting against that. If I get elected to the Senate, I'll hopefully be on the crossbench, and we'll be able to block any attempt by the government to roll back Australian civil liberties. We really want to fight to protect individual freedoms, fight to protect human rights, human dignity, support the poor, support people who've been left behind, vulnerable. We're just basically for the underdog, people who are left behind by this brutal system.
Are you able to be a member of different minor parties and yours? I know it's different rules, different parties. I'm just curious.
I think the Australian Electoral Council, they do say that you have to be a member of one party. So like,
really?
So the way it works, right, it's actually a really difficult thing. So the process to form your own party, originally you only need 500 members. We got 500 members easy. And then the government overnight,
to 1,500.
Yeah, lifted it to 1,500 and basically what that did was probably 30 or so minor parties will not be able to run at the next election now, because they're not going to be able to get to 1,500. We have reached 1,500. We're at 1,600. I think we're actually only like the third micro party to reach that, like in all of Australia. But like the sad thing is, it's really hard. So like you submit the list of members, and then they ring 10% of your membership. So you submit 1,500 names, they ring 150. And if even 10% of that 150, so 15 people that they ring up say, oh, I don't remember joining, or I'm not a member, then you can't run at the next election. You can't form your party. So that's the most difficult thing, right? And they do actually go through. And so if they were to find that some people were members of another party, they might ask the person, like, well, you have to pick which one. And then if they picked like the other party, then like that would count towards...
Really?
Yeah, really? So it's a really difficult...
I thought, so is this a recent change? Because I remember thinking in the 2019 election, for example, you could be a member of the Christian Democrat Party, but also Cory Bernardi's Australian Conservative Party. They must have changed the rules.
I mean, I think it's always been a rule, but it's only really enforced, I think, at the stage when you're registering the party, because that's when they actually ring up like a random sample of your membership, and they actually go like, which one are you going to choose? So,
Okay.
so say 150 members of our party get called up, and say like 3 or 4 were like member of just Joe Blogg's party, just for example, like they would be asked by the AC. So which member? Yeah.
Okay. No. Okay. I see what it is.
And then if they were to say
it's not mandated. It's just a problem for you guys
registering.
if for registering to
I'm pretty
reach
sure
that
that's
number. Okay.
yeah.
Big difference. See, with the Liberal Party, for example, you can't be a member of the Labor Party. Obviously, you can't be a member of really any other party. But with the minor parties, they're a lot more flexible with that, because there's all these minor parties that are basically the same party. They're just different flavors.
Look, we actually
that's the frustration. Yeah.
The cool thing about us, I would say, is we are really unique. Like, what we're doing is actually the first of its case in the world, because one thing I'm really excited to have about our party. So we've got a candidate who's like Australian, but she's from Tibet. We've got a candidate who's Australian, but she's a Uyghur background. We've got a candidate who's Australian, but he's of Hong Konger background. So all these people have actually been right on the front lines of being persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party. They've been right on the front lines of fighting against the CCP. And like the really powerful thing, I think, is like, the left always want to try and say, oh, opposition to China is racist. Well, no, we've actually got this really beautiful multicultural team. We're bringing together all these communities that have been persecuted, and we're giving people a voice. And these people, these communities, like Australians from Tibet or Hong Kong or Uyghur, like these people, they're such proud and strong Australians, because they often say like, Australia basically saved us, because if we weren't able to come to Australia, like we would have been like in the concentration camps ourselves. So like these people are like so committed. If you want like your representatives to be people who you can trust will take on like this really, really brutal government we know how extensive CCP infiltration has been in Australian politics. They've really tried to buy up politicians in our parliament and stuff. If you really, really want to like make sure like you trust, like you're going to be electing people who are fighting against this government, then man, we are like honestly the first party in the world to like be run and led by people who've been persecuted by this government. Like
I'd love to see it. Honestly, nothing would make me more happy than to see a Uyghur Muslim in your party rising up and just on the Australian
we've got a really exciting
hammering them.
We've got really exciting news. Like next Sunday, we're going to be on 60 Minutes.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, mate.
So
what is that, like the 5th 60-minute segment you guys have been on? That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I've been on it twice or so before, but like, yeah, if people want to keep a lookout, like next Sunday on 60 Minutes, there'll be like, I think about 10-15 minutes will be sort of following like how we've started up the party and stuff. So I'm super excited. We just did the interview just the other day. It's a bit hard though, because, like, they were filming me like just giving out lollipops in the streets and stuff, signing people up, and I was like, and I was in my like happy, funny mood and stuff like that. But then obviously, like in recent days, what's happened? Like it's been, so I don't know. It's going to be weird, because it's like it's going to be presenting me as like really super happy, fun, like. But then like just at the moment, I'm super like devastated because of what my friend's family had gone through. I don't know. It's such a complex situation.
I can't imagine it, bro. I can't imagine it. If my Instagram got hacked and I had two-factor authenticator and a Uyghur Muslim reached out to me, I'd feel terrible if that information led to them being thrown into a camp. I'd be like, is there anything I could have done to stop this?
Oh, man. I mean, since I found out, it's just basically been the only thing on my mind. Like, I can't think of anything else.
It's not your fault, man. It's just, you are just a part of one of these stories. That's just what's happened now. And it hurts more because you're a player in it. And it's like, it's the whole shoulda, coulda, woulda. What could I have done, bro?
And it's so crazy. It's so crazy becoming a player. It's so crazy becoming a player in this stuff, especially like at our age, man. Like, 22 years old. When I first got into politics, I didn't know a single journalist, didn't know a single person in politics. Like, I just was basically protesting because I was sick by this government. I didn't have any like plans. I didn't have any like goals necessarily. Like, this all just sort of like when I started, like, there was no way, if you go back 2 years to that first protest where it all started, where I got attacked by Chinese nationalists, they like assaulted me and stuff. If you had like told me that day, like in 2.5 years, like, your life will be like completely devoted to fighting the Chinese Communist Party. You're going to be running at the next federal election, forming the first sort of like anti-CCP party in the world. Like, I'd be like, no way.
I don't believe you. I don't
Yeah,
believe
because
you. But you know what? If you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself, right?
yeah, it's true. It's true. You just because man, if I had just been, I was member of the like I tried to go through the major parties and stuff like that. Like when I was stupid and young, like I joined up to like Young Labour or whatever, and like, man, it's like a cult. It's like robotic. You're not
I
allowed to
know. I
think.
know.
It's the same with
I
Young
know.
Liberals. To be fair, it's the same with
It
Young
is.
Liberals.
It
Like it's
is.
all
No,
major
no.
parties.
All major parties, Nationals, Greens. They're like,
Yeah,
which faction are you in? You know,
yeah,
we'll
and you
take care
can't
of
think
you.
as
It's
an
like,
independent. So that's why I was like, nah, stuff that. I just have to like. I feel so strongly about this. There's no way you can do that through the parties. You just got to go out and do it yourself.
yeah, I would have done well if I went into the parties, but I don't think it would have suit my temperament, just like you.
Yeah, it
And
wouldn't.
that's and that's the funny thing, Drew. You know, this whole intellectual dark web thing. A lot of people don't know what that is. I defined it. I defined it. It's being intellectually honest about what you believe. It doesn't
Hopefully,
matter
yeah,
if you're left or right. It doesn't matter if you're left or right. It's about saying this is what I believe, and I'm not going to compromise that. And billions of dollars worth of money won't change my mind on it.
yeah. No,
People
that's true.
people being thrown in camps is not something you can throw under the rug. It's
Yeah,
not.
no, I agree on
Um,
that, man. I agree on that. I mean, just for me personally, like, there is nothing that I honestly don't know what short of me literally like getting killed by the CCP, and I've had all these psycho death threats. Like, short of that, I don't know what would stop me because it's just like it is so important to me. I feel like if I were to be silent, I'd be betraying every single cell of my body, man. Like I feel like I'd be betraying my soul because I know how brutal the concentration camps are. So how can I not be raising my voice against it?
Absolutely. Everyone in the comments keeps saying, "Please save this." I always save these lives. I don't know what you guys are on about. I'm gonna send it off to you, Drew. I'm hoping that you talking to me doesn't cop you too much heat in the Twitter world, but I'd strongly encourage you to expand more into Facebook and
Well, I would,
Instagram.
man. If people want to cancel me, they can cancel me. I talk to people regardless. Like, bro, I talk to socialists. I even talk to like communists. I talk to right wing. I talk to Catholic conservatives. I talk to right wing. I talk to moderates. I talk to centre left. I talk to progressives. I talk to socialist communists. I talk to anyone who is, interested in what's happening and wants to actually go against a genocide. It's something that's too big to be just like a left or a right wing issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even about the issue. It's like you can talk to whoever you want. I mean, as a journalist, we see these major news corporations that smear us, yet they'll go and interview Mugabe, and it's like, guys, what are
Yeah,
you doing? Like forgot, like
true.
it's not a thing. It's not a thing. Like you're guilt by association. Or it's like, oh, you're
Yeah, guilt by
platforming him.
association.
It's like, yeah, sure, I'm platforming someone. Doesn't mean I agree with them. We
I know
clash on
it's
stuff.
that's
You
so
know,
frustrating. Like trying the constant trend to try and cancel people by association. Like I think it's for me. Like I guess I was always progressive, but my family members have always been conservative. Like my family, my parents love Trump. Like so like there's no safe space for me. Like my family members who I love so much, like they've got very different political views to me. They're much more conservative than I am. So like I can't. There's no way I can just be like a sort of trigger person, like just retreat to a safe space or whatever. Like every day I have to confront people who have completely different views to myself. So like I feel like there's just no way I could just be like, oh, I'm only talking to people on the left or I'm only talking to people. Like you've just got to be able to talk to anyone, kind of.
yeah.
Obviously,
Drew,
obviously, some extreme cases, like someone who's violent, someone who's like actually like evil, like I would not, But like for
yeah.
the vast majority of cases, just the fact that someone's more conservative than me, it doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to them. That's so silly.
Yeah. Drew, do you have Telegram?
I don't have Telegram actually, but maybe I
Brother,
should.
brother, get on that stuff now. A
Maybe I
few
should.
months
Maybe I
ago,
should.
a few months ago, we saw that thing with your Facebook account, that scare that
Yeah,
was, that
that's
post
true.
was
My
banned.
Facebook did get taken down.
Bro, censorship is getting really, really bad. Like my
Yeah.
Facebook page, it's got the same amount of followers as the Turning Point Australia page because I built both of them up.
Yeah.
Yet the reach is, I think it's a sixth of what the other one is. This is
Oh man,
not good.
I've even noticed that with my Facebook. Like they've just been killing reach lately. It's so
And
hard.
this
Like
one too, like the reason I'm on Turning Point now is the same one with this one. This one's getting smashed. I used to be able to get
yeah,
like over 1,000 people on a live, and now
yeah. I
it's
saw
like,
that.
oh
Yeah, I
crap.
saw you were getting 1,000 people on a live, and
Yeah,
then
like
yeah, they
the peak was three and a half thousand. That was when I
wow.
joined a few people in, obviously. But
Yeah,
even when I jump on personally, I should just on one account the 20,000. I should be getting like 600, 700 people like I used to, but it's not the case.
Yeah, it's
And
hard, man.
this is
There's a lot of
all,
shadow banning going on.
yeah, and that's why I built up a Telegram. It's on. I think it's approaching like 25,000, and that
Oh,
doesn't
damn.
go anywhere. That yeah, but look, that's not going anywhere. And so if I
True.
create a new Instagram, completely brand new, I can be like, hey guys, 25,000, go straight there, and it's like boom. It's like a
True.
checkpoint. Like everyone, everyone that's doing influencer left, right, you all got to do it. It's like
Look,
it's very
look,
important.
because I'm running for office and I'm going against the Chinese Communist Party, I probably should actually think about a Telegram because, man, like, one thing I've noticed, like, a lot of the time what they'll do is, like, just, they can get a lot of bots to just make all these frivolous complaints. And if Facebook and stuff just get bombarded with, like, 1,000 complaints by these bots, like, you're just done. And I've noticed, like, that's
absolutely.
actually, yeah, man.
Yeah.
No, I will get onto that, but...
Look, thanks for coming on, brother. If you need anything, you let me know. Especially on the censorship stuff, because that's annoying. But
no,
thanks
thank you,
so much
Joel.
for coming on.
I'm glad we can have conversations like this where people who, you know, a bit different in political views, like, actually can still talk about fundamentals, which is just, you know, civil liberties, anti-authoritarianism, going into the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, those are stuff that everyone should agree on if you believe in, you know, basic human dignity and stuff like that. So, man, I'm glad that we can have conversations like this. It's good. It's good. Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure, man. You know how much I enjoy these guys. Go follow Drew at the top if you're not
Thank you,
already.
guys.
If you want to keep, this is his area. This is his expertise. If you want to know how China's influencing Australia, he's your guy. So go follow him, especially because I'm going to get censored soon, guys, and I need all the people that follow me to follow accounts that are like-minded on free speech and free expression and human dignity. So my account's going soon. Mark my words, the 21K. As soon it's gonna be getting 20 people on a live, because I see, bro. You gotta. I'll send you an account in a sec. His name's Isaac. The guy gets 40 people on a live, and he's got 40,000 followers. 40,000 followers. That's what it gets you. Like
even just my Twitter for a while. Like I have about like 25,000 on Twitter or whatever. But there was a while like earlier in the year where like you'd put out a tweet and just like nothing. And I don't know. Like it's really weird how like the reach works with these social media companies. Like they can really like manipulate it to just stuff you up.
Yeah, well, Project Veritas has done some good exposés on that, especially on Facebook. But,
I haven't looked into it, but yeah, maybe you send me some links. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Just hope we can just have as many people from different political backgrounds come together as possible, come together and just, you know, be united in that one thing. Genocide is wrong, and we need to be against it when it's occurring right now in the modern day.
Absolutely. If anyone's listening to this and they're wondering what the hell are you guys talking about because you've just tuned in, listen to this conversation again. I'm going to upload it here and save it. I'm also going to put it on my YouTube because we haven't talked about anything that's going to get us censored, so it's safe. And you wouldn't believe it, Drew. I had a video from 10 months ago get banned on my YouTube channel, and it got me a strike. Like they're retrospectively changing the rules and applying it. It's ridiculous. But yeah, guys, if you want to listen back to the convo, I'm going to upload in a sec. But Drew, thanks so much, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
And
keep it up, man. Thank you so much.
I'll see you in Queensland soon. I want to come up there in December.
Honestly, man, we'll see what happens. Anastasia Palaszczuk has this really extreme measure where she wants it to be 90% before she opens up. Like, man, I hope we can see each other sooner. I think, thank God, we're almost at the end of this hell, you know, of the lockdowns, and I just really hope, we'll be able to see our families, and hopefully we'll get to catch up then too.
Mark my words, and I want to go on record saying this because I like playing these videos back because it ends up being right. Like Gladys going, I said, guys, she's going to go for the end of the year, and she went. So mark my words, we're going to get summer. New South Wales is going to lead the way. We're going to have some losses in the short term, but we're going to lead the way with the opening up. But we're going to have another round of this as things start to get colder next year, and we start talking about booster jabs just like they do in Israel. And that's when the real fight's going to come. And you know, people like yourself, you're going to have to ask yourself the question: how long can we keep this up? I mean, and that's where I'm hoping Dominic Perrottet actually comes out and is like,
look,
no,
it needs to look. My position is very clear. Like, it just needs to be an individual choice. Like, you can't say to people, either take this or starve. Like, that's just wrong. I don't see how that's ever acceptable, really. Like, you can't force people who are really already on the margins of the economy. You can't just be, who are already sort of pushed up against the wall. You can't just be like, either like, you know, comply or we're just going to starve you and your family. Like, that is just sick. In whatever society, that's sick.
Yeah, you should see that. You should see my DMs, man. It's a disaster down here, especially in southwestern Sydney, where there's it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. There's just too many messages. But I'll talk about that another time. Thank you so much, brother. I hope you have a great day. And it's been a pleasure hosting you and platforming dangerous ideas and opinions.
Thank you, man. Have a good one. Later. Thank you, guys.
See you later, man. Thanks so much.